The air here is unbearable. Garbage is everywhere. Bones are scattered all over. This isn't hell. It's the harsh reality in parts of the Philippines. In this forgotten place, people live side by side with the dead in broken-down graveyards. The kids' toys are scattered bones. The homes here are made from tombstones and ruins. They're stuck in this cemetery with nowhere else to go, but they've made a life here. In this marginalized community, they survive off the cemetery. No steady jobs, no decent homes, not even basic needs met. But they've made it work. The cemetery has become their home. Here, no rent to pay, no bills to worry about. They can even earn a little by providing funeral services today. We're going inside the cemetery slums of the Philippines to hear their stories and see their lives. This is a cemetery where thousands are buried, but for some it's also home. Some people have lived here their whole lives. Shops open every day. People go to work in the mornings. Kids walk to school. At first glance, it seems like a normal neighborhood, but take a closer look, and it's anything but ordinary. Every morning, the kids in this community go to preschool. The only preschool is in a tomb. The classroom is tiny, right next to a cement coffin where kids read and write. For them, it's not strange. They've grown up here. It's just the way things are because of corruption in the Philippines and the influence of the US. This country, once a rising star in Asia, has fallen from grace. The gap between rich and poor is massive, leaving the poorest to live off garbage, and engraves farmers seeking a better life left their strict rural homes and moved to cities like Manila with no money to survive. They had to build illegal slums as more and more people flooded the cities. The slums only grew until eventually people started living in cemeteries and other public spaces. In recent years, foreign investments and growth in manufacturing have boosted the Philippine economy. Manila's population has exploded. Now over 14 million people live here. But like other developing countries, when things grow too fast, the poor often get left behind. In Manila, not everyone shares in the economic boom. The number of people living in slums is on the rise. One of these slums is a cemetery in the north of the city. About 10,000 people live in tombs there. These massive cemeteries are where many Filipinos are buried. Manila has many cemeteries, where everyone from presidents to celebrities rests. Thousands of bodies lie beneath the ground. But for those without homes or land, they live among the dead. They move in, and over time, this cemetery has turned into a whole community. Each tomb becomes a home, and people live everyday lives. What stands out here are the kids playing all over the cemetery. This is their playground, and it's also where many people work. Around 300 families call this cemetery home. It's where they survive. They go about their daily routines while funeral processions pass by, carrying loved ones to their graves. Compared to slums, the cemetery seems like a better option. They sleep on beds set up on top of the tomb, with just a thin board separating them from the dead. Most families have a few tombs around them, but they're not scared. When you're poor, nothing scares you more than being without a roof in some areas. It's hard to even see any sign of normal life. Living here isn't allowed, but the authorities turn a blind eye. If they kicked everyone out, there'd be a lot more homeless people on the streets. Every family here has electricity, but they get it by stealing power from the cemetery system. That's the only way they can stay connected. At first, not many people lived here. Most were cemetery workers. There's no rent to pay, and the ground is flat. It's basically a paradise for the poor. More and more homeless people are moving in, making this their home. Living here means you don't worry about land or rent, and there are no utility or management fees. Life is a little less stressful. Anyone can find a job and survive. But for the dead buried here, things are much more complicated. Rey and Ralph have been digging this grave for 2 days. The monsoon and heavy rain last night made things even harder. The dirt and debris keep falling back into the hole. But they can't stop. Someone's got to be buried in just a few hours. The grave isn't new. It's for a young girl. Her family couldn't afford the burial fees. Now all that's left is her collar exposing her bones. They carefully lift her head and gently place it in a bag. Graves like this usually have a 5-year lease. Once it's up, the bones get moved, put into a sack for the family to pick up. A lot of bones don't get claimed. Old sacks are scattered around the cemetery skulls, and bones are left baking in the sun. With no protection, they're working with their bare hands in the mud. For each grave they clear, they get about $10. The work's simple but requires attention. They can't miss a single bone. It's so the next person can take full ownership of the plot. People walking by are used to it. They don't even glance. An hour later, the girl's remains are moved, and the new owner can't wait to move in. The man who just passed away was old. His family paid for 5 years of rent after 5 years if the family can't renew. He'll be moved or abandoned, just like the girl. Some of the dead, though, always have family nearby. Ricardo's been living here for 50 years, with his third wife taking care of their little home. Their house sits between two apartment-like tombs. This rundown place raised all their kids. It's a big family, 18 people in total. Ricardo watches over his first wife and his oldest son. His son was killed in a police shootout while they were chasing drug dealers. Since then, he's lived as close as possible to his son's grave to care for him. He cleans every day, with up to 100 funerals happening each day. There's always a high demand for funeral services, but the cemetery space is running out fast. The graves are packed, and hearses often can't make it to the plot. Mourners have to carry the casket themselves. The high occupancy rate means hundreds of bodies are removed every day. Some are taken by family members, while others are just thrown in a bag and left in a corner. Wealthy families choose quieter, more secure resting places. In private cemeteries, they can make sure their loved ones are left undisturbed. These cemeteries are often extravagant, with each tomb looking unique. No one occupies space without permission. Most of the wealthy here are Chinese, which is why you see so many Chinese-style graves. These luxury tombs don't just hold coffins, some even have family areas with kitchens and BBQ grills. The plots are often bigger than some people's homes. But there are cemeteries for the poor too. Here the graves are stacked on top of each other. The first residents mostly came from Samar Island in the Philippines. After losing everything in the 1980s typhoons, they moved here. At first, they built makeshift homes, then eventually found work and built proper houses as more poor people moved in. The area grew. Having a place to live in Manila is a big advantage, since it offers better job opportunities without having to travel far. After living here for years, they've settled into the environment. All the cemeteries here share one thing: bones scattered everywhere. The bones are taken from the graves stuffed in bags. Sometimes picked up by family, other times left behind. Kids often play with these bones, kicking them like soccer balls or using them as toys. These stacked graves are for those who can't afford private plots. The bodies aren't buried. They're stored in cement boxes on the ground. The graves are rented for 5 years, and they're much cheaper. After 5 years, the bodies are moved, and new ones take their place. And you can't renew the lease. Maldred and his family live in a cemetery. He digs up bodies every day. He started this job 20 years ago. The first time he did it, it was unforgettable. The fear and smell left him shaken for a week. Now he's used to it. He's learned a few things over the years. Like skulls have to be handled carefully, or he'll end up with a headache that night. When working, don't pray or apologize to the boners. Stay quiet instead. Otherwise, you might get sick. Co-worker tried that once and ended up covered in rashes when he got home. His job is to put the remains in bags with names on them, then leave them by the graves waiting for the family to pick them up. Unclaimed bodies get burned by him. But he waits until the kids are done playing and working, so the smell doesn't affect their health. Nico and Arnold clean the gravestones. They only have a brush and soap. They clean about 30 gravestones a day and make 20 pesos, which they give to their parents after work. The kids spend some of their money at the arcade because of poverty. Many kids can't go to school and have to work to survive. When they grow up, they follow their families into hard labor or the funeral business. The only nice place around is the beach, but it's more like a garbage dump at night. They wash off the day's dirt at the trash-covered beach. It used to be clean, but every typhoon brings in more trash and no one cleans it up over time. The beach has become a landfill. But for the people here, it's the best place to bathe. There's a quote from the Shawshank Redemption: "Some are busy living, some are busy dying, some are busy living a life worse than death." This sums up the inequality in the Philippines perfectly. In the Philippines, some people work just to survive. Some try to escape poverty. But many are stuck in a huge gap between the rich and the poor, living hopeless lives. The place is full of trash. The smell is unbearable. Bones lie around. And there's nowhere to go. It's shocking during the day, but at night people come out of their homes, gathering in the square as the cool breeze blows, and the problems seem to fade away. Kids play and fool around, young people gamble or shoot hoops, others relax in the evening breeze chatting. The cemetery community feels alive again. The Philippines shares some similarities with African and South American countries. A lot of people have a laid-back attitude lacking motivation with a slower pace of life and little pressure. At night they gather to sing, dance and drink. It's a place with a huge divide between rich and poor, where many have given up on changing their situation, resigned to life in the slums, because it feels like the country has given up on them too. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll take you to every corner of the world. See you next time.